Good evening, folks, and welcome aboard to another McNeil webinar, where tonight we'll be talking about LOSAP with our good friends from Penflex. Specifically tonight, we're going to get into some of the administrative and duty pieces of the LOSAP. And to help get us through the program, we've got Paul Cognetta, the VP of Operations of Penflex. Paul, welcome aboard, and let's dive into it.
Dave, thank you for having me.
So Paul, maybe we could start with just a quick reminder, what is LOSAP, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. So LOSAP, as you see on the slide, states Length of Service Award Program. And what this is, it's a great tool to recruit and retain fire and emergency service volunteers for local fire departments, EMS departments, municipalities, towns, to staff their volunteer departments. And LOSAP actually acts as a pension-like product. It's not a true pension, but there are some financial rewards for a length of service award program, Dave.
So as you talk about recruitment and retention, I know that's big on the minds of a lot of departments, really kind of struggling with that at this point. So what's the LOSAP mean for the volunteers and for the prospective members?
So, Dave, I always like to ask the question, where can you volunteer and receive a financial reward for volunteering? The answer is nowhere. When you volunteer, you're giving of one's time without a financial expectation at the end of this. So people that volunteer for a fire department or EMS department, first, they get their own satisfaction of helping their local community. We have over 40,000 volunteers that we serve through LOSAP. And it's amazing the stories that you hear from the volunteers that we administer the plans for, of all the good that they do. It's just amazing to us. But the benefit from not only just feeling good about volunteering is for those individuals that do volunteer, and they volunteer faithfully and they dedicate their time over years, at the end of their time, when they're ready to stop volunteering, they're going to be able to receive a financial award for their efforts and their dedication. And as you'll see as we go through the presentation, some of these financial rewards can be quite substantial.
So let's talk about just how substantial that may be.
All right, Dave. Well, perfect timing as we go to the next slide. So you can see on the slide, some of these plans, LOSAP plans, if you're in for a good period of time, and when I mean good period of time, you could say 15, 20, 25 years, 30, depending on how long a plan will allow you to stay in. But some plans that we have done for participants, they've been able to achieve anywhere from $100,000 up to $300,000 to supplement any other additional retirement income that they may have coming in. And the nice thing about LOSAP, as the participant, you're not making any contributions, Dave. The fire district, the municipality, the town, they're putting the money in for you. So it's not like that traditional 401k where you put money in and then it'll be matched at a certain percentage. The LOSAP plan, ultimately, you put no money in. And when we have been recently talking to some of our clients, they all talk about the economy and the recent downward trends and money being lost on their 401ks. Well, as I've told a lot of them, this is why LOSAP is more important now than ever, because it's another additional supplement to retirement. And that is truly a benefit to those individuals who serve their fire districts and EMS departments. And then additionally, some of the other benefits to LOSAP is there is a life insurance component. So if someone unfortunately was to pass away, there would be life insurance that would be involved. And also, if you are a volunteer and you were to get hurt by volunteering, there's also disability benefits. So the LOSAP really does cover many financial aspects of one's individual's life.
It's very interesting in that I don't think many people volunteer. Obviously, volunteer is what it means, and we're not doing that to make money. But there was so many different places and organizations out there that I could volunteer my time to. You certainly have my attention in that now I can, be part of the fire service, help out my community like I want to do, but there is some financial reward at the end of the tunnel. So as I hear about these plans, I always get a little bit confused, and I know there's a difference between a defined benefit and a defined contribution. What does that mean to me, or what's the difference there?
So Dave, as you'll see on this slide that we've created, as you mentioned, there are two types. One, defined benefit, and we've highlighted that because it is very attractive, meaning a monthly payout for the life of the volunteer. Again, you don't see too many situations these days where you're going to be able to get paid for your efforts, volunteering no less, for the rest of your life if you have a defined benefit plan. The other plan is a defined contribution plan. And what this means is some fire districts will say, okay, we're going to make a one lump sum payment to you when you reach a certain entitlement age. Entitlement ages, Dave, can range anywhere from 55 up to usually 65, anywhere in between. And when someone reaches that entitlement age, they'll receive a lump sum for their volunteering efforts. So those are the two distinct differences between the two. And when we go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more in depth about the differences. So if you look for the DB, which stands for defined benefit, all the way to the left, it will say a monthly income for life, okay, which I just stated. If you keep going down that column, the risk, any investments for defined benefit, the risk is really taken on by the plan sponsor. Well, who is the plan sponsor? The plan sponsor is usually that fire district, town, or municipality, and they're the ones that are making the investments on the behalf of the volunteer. So this is really a type of plan, Dave, where you don't have to sit down and analyze your statements, quarterly or monthly. Everything is really done on autopilot for you. And what we do here at Penflex is every year we will send out a statement to each plan participant to let them know how their account is progressing. On a DC type of plan, it's a defined amount that a fire district may put in. So let's say, for example, they put in $240 every year. So every year, no matter if the market's high or low, $240 is going into that plan. So it's pretty stable. The difference, though, with a defined contribution and defined benefit, the risk is more shifted toward the participant in the defined contribution. And the reason for that, Dave, is on a defined contribution, it's the same dollar amount that goes in year after year. So if there are investment losses, there's not that opportunity to have more money put in by the municipality. They're putting that same dollar amount in. But again, when you have gains, you have that positive side to that. On a defined benefit, the defined benefit is required to put a certain amount of money in. So if the plan was to lose money because of poor investments in a given year, the plan sponsor has to make up that money to get to that level. So people consider it a little richer plan than the defined contribution. I will tell you, there's much more work that goes into a defined benefit plan, as far as it from an administration perspective. Because one of the things that you have to do, Dave, with defined benefit is you have to take a pool of information. Well, that pool of information is in essence all the participants that are in a plan, and you have to project how long they've been in a plan. You have to project their age. You have to project how far out they will go and staying in the plan. So in essence, you're projecting all the way out potentially until someone passes away. Well, what we have to do is we employ here what is known as an actuary, which we'll get to momentarily. And an actuary has to do a lot of mathematical calculations to make sure that we are funding a defined benefit plan properly, to make sure that it continues year after year after year. So if we could go
I
to
was
the next.
really hoping you were going to tell me there was some wizard that did all this, because as you started explaining it, I was like, who the heck figures all this out? So let's dive into that actuary a little bit, and maybe you can tell some more about that.
Perfect. So as you'll see on this slide, an actuary is someone that is a credentialed person. Well, what does that mean? Usually an actuary will start off going to college and studying to become an actuary. From that point, Dave, it's an exam process, just like, becoming a lawyer or a doctor or a CPA. There's a series of exams that you have to pass. They are very difficult exams. And as you see on the slide, sometimes it can take up to a decade to pass all the exams. Once those exams are done, you still have to do continuing education. So it can't be, oh, geez, I just passed. Now I'm totally free and clear. The expectation is that you continue your continuing education. Then ultimately you do become credentialed. That's what your desire is. And there are a few different types of professional societies. One is Society of Actuaries, and the other one is American Academy of Actuaries. So in essence, you are registering with these organizations that you are a credentialed actuary. Well, why is that important? If we go to the next slide, I can talk about why this is important. So when we have clients that are just starting out, that wanting to put a LOSAP program together, a lot of the defined benefit plans, if not all, you have to have a voter referendum. And why is that? Because how you're funding a LOSAP plan is you're using taxpayer dollars. So ultimately, Dave, the taxpayers need to vote to determine if they want to have a LOSAP plan in their area. And one of the things that an actuary will do is do the financial calculations to determine the cost of a LOSAP program. And here, particularly in New York State, it's written in our municipal law that when you go to vote a referendum, you have to have an actuary do the calculations, and they have to be signed off on. So you can't just have anyone come and say, okay, I think the plan needs X amount of money, with not having the information behind it. So what are we looking for when we do what we call an actuarial evaluation? Well, what we're trying to determine is how long a volunteer will live, how long they've been a participant, what will that entitlement age be, and we take all that into account along with our actuarial assumptions, some of which are, okay, what do we think the rate of investment returns are going to be? Now, if you talk to us a year ago, Dave, certainly those investment results would be higher than what they are going to be projected for this year and another upcoming year. Actuarials will want to make a conservative approach because, again, what's most important with these valuations, Dave, is we want to make sure they are viable financially viable, not just for this year, not just for 5 years, but for the life of a LOSAP plan. And we have LOSAP plans that have been around 30, 40 years. So it's a great level of responsibility that an actuary is doing these financial calculations, and we do them every year. And the municipality will receive them, the town, the fire district, whoever may be that plan administrator. So they get them every year. They get that statistical history. But more importantly, too, is each participant will get their own individual calculation that our actuary has calculated to say, okay, here's what you're trending towards. You know, if you get to this age, here's potentially what your benefit will be. So there's a lot of responsibility on an actuary to make sure these calculations are correct, because they touch so many people in a LOSAP plan. And then they also have to review the plan revisions. And what are simple plan revisions? Well, certainly, as I mentioned earlier, Dave, there's different entitlement ages. You know, some plans will do 55, some will do 65. Well, if you're giving money to people earlier, then that's a different financial calculation than saying, okay, well, now it's going to be 10 years later. We're paying out 10 years later. What does that look like? So they need to understand the calculation or the financial provisions in a plan. They also need to understand credited years of service. You know, some plans will have service credits where they're 25 years and then you reach your maximum. Some now go all the way up to 50 with recent legislation that just changed here in New York State. So again, these are things that an actuary will need to do and understand when creating the financial valuation report for that particular LOSAP program.
Well, it sounds like this actuary is a pretty major piece of the puzzle as we put our plans together.
Absolutely. And what we did for tonight's presentation is created this simple little chart, if you will, that really shows the importance of an actuary. So if you look on the top, this is the data that we receive from the fire district. It's that sensitive information that we just spoke about. So again, it's the number of participants in a plan. It is the age of the participants in the plan. It's the number of people that are already receiving LOSAP benefits. You know, what is the financial calculations on the overall plan to who's already receiving money? It's also talking about new members that are coming in. You know, how many more years do they have until they reach an entitlement age where they're able to receive a financial reward? So we get this census information in. And then Penflex, we do the administration of that. So we're doing all that data collection. We're looking at all that information. And what we do is then take that information and put it in a nice little neat report for the municipality in town or fire district, again, called the valuation report. And this report is every year, as I mentioned earlier. And the nice thing, Dave, we've been doing this for over 30 years, Penflex, is that we will send out to all of our clients what is called a data request package in December. So we're giving you this package a month in advance of the fire district and EMS departments actually having to make sure that their points are correct, verifying any information before they send us anything. And the other piece to this model that works so well for us, all of our actuaries, Dave, are in-house. So we don't go outside. We don't use third-party vendors. So when our clients have questions about their valuation reports, they get to speak to us directly. There is no middle person. There are no callbacks and having to wait. We're all under one roof. We're all present. We have a good understanding of LOSAP. This is all that we do. So there are actuarial firms out there that do a number of different financial calculations for a number of different businesses and industries. We don't. We do LOSAP and LOSAP only. And that's what makes us highly effective. And as you see on this slide, we have 2 senior actuaries with over 40 years of experience. And some of the plan sizes that they've worked on over their careers range from 40 participants to well over 400,000. The knowledge base that our actuaries have is extensive. And that is one of the pieces that makes us so successful here at Penflex, is that we're able to address questions from municipalities and towns and participants who don't understand LOSAP, and nor should they. This is what we're here for. We're help to give guidance and counsel. And we also want to continue to build what I like to call our pipeline. So we have 2 actuarial analysts right now that are working towards that career track and taking their exams, and will soon be fully credentialed actuaries themselves. So we're continuing to build our bench. And you see on that slide, Dave, these are the credentials that our staff has presently, and they're all highly impressive. And the enrolled actuary, number 3, under ERISA, ERISA stands for Employee Retirement Income Security Act. And what that is a government regulated act that our actuaries are part of and understand and are members of. And again, it just adds to that bench for our organization. So when we are doing defined benefit plans for LOSAP, our clients can be rest assured that the actuaries that are doing their work understand quite well what a LOSAP plan is and how to do those calculations, how to determine risk, but most importantly, how to make sure that the plan remains financially viable for the future. Because that LOSAP participant that's volunteering year after year after year and is dedicated and committed to that volunteer department, they want to make sure at the end of their time, they're going to be financially rewarded. And that's the responsibility of an actuary, to make sure that the town, fire department, municipality is on the right path from a funding perspective.
So it sounds like not only is this actuary very important to me, but the relationship between the provider and my organization and me as a volunteer is pretty important as well.
Absolutely, Dave, because, again, from a volunteer standpoint perspective, we want to make sure that you're spending the time on the things that matter. And that's volunteering in that fire department. It shouldn't have to be worrying about looking at statements and how things are calculated. We'll do that for you. And the same thing for the fire departments and towns and municipalities. All these programs, they get audited. And one of the nice things that our actuaries do is we will approve and put together an audit package if they desire that as part of their LOSAP services, and we will prepare that, and they then can just hand that over to their auditors. So it makes it quite simple from an auditing perspective. to have the actuaries do those reports for them also.
Lots of great information there, Paul. If anybody's got more questions, how do they get a hold of you and your staff to get some of those answered?
Well, Dave, thank you very much. As you see on this slide here, we do have an email address. You can reach out to us. We also have an 800 number. We also have a website. Any of those ways you can contact us, and our staff all very well prepared to answer any questions. And if you have specific questions into an actuary, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, you actually get to speak to one of our actuaries immediately. If it's more of a general question, the staff can answer your general questions. So one of the cornerstones for our organization, Dave, is service. It always has been, because again, we value the individuals who commit their time to volunteer, and this is our way of saying thank you to them for their service.
Pretty impressive, and thanks for all that information, Paul. I know we've got a couple additional webinars coming up where we're going to dive into some of the items more specifically. Any final thoughts for the folks as we part ways tonight?
Well, I think, Dave, you hit it right on the head from the outset. Volunteering is becoming harder and harder to find those individuals for fire departments and EMS departments. And LOSAP is a wonderful tool to help retain and recruit individuals. And we would be glad to talk to existing clients that might be on our call today and have further questions about enhancing their plan. We would love to talk to individuals that are on this webinar this evening that don't have a plan, that would like more information. And we come out, we visit, we do virtual meetings, we'll talk to boards, we'll talk to participants. Part of what we do, Dave, is an educational piece to what LOSAP is, much more than a webinar of say 30 to 40 minutes. We'll spend some in-depth time and have questions answered by us for participants. So please reach out to us. We'll be glad to talk LOSAP.
Well, we certainly appreciate that, Paul, and we appreciate your time tonight, and we appreciate everybody's time for joining us this evening. So again, if you've got more questions that Paul and the crew can answer for you, 1-800-742-1409. Email address is up there on the screen, and we look forward to catching you on a future webinar. Thanks for joining us tonight.